It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. That was all over the place. What the hell? It's Feedback Friday. And this Feedback Friday, I've got a basic idea of how this is going to go, but I'm going to see how this eventually meanders. I want to note the passing of Daniel Kahneman, who you'll know him as the author of Thinking Fast and Slow. If you know him at all, he was a pioneer of behavioral economics, and the thinking of his that trickled down about the biases of intuition has been really, really foundational to my way of approaching things. And so I just wanted to, there are PDFs online of Thinking Fast and Slow if you want to read the book and can't afford it. But it is, it's another way of talking about that whole, the elephant and the rider thing that I talked about on Monday. And let's see how this goes as I get into it. Yeah. So, I'm going to focus on very few comments. First of all, thank you for the love for Galatea, the new Galatea fans here, the Authentic Observer. I never know how it's going to go when I interview someone I respect from afar. And I mean, Song loves her. So that was a really positive experience. Those are rare. My experiences with people whose content I like, they tend to despise me and put me on block lists. So, it's nice when somebody comes into something without a preconception of me. Take the wins when you get them. And that's one of the things where with the content for this week, I think it's important to know about me that I cannot indulge in the world hates me, nobody cares thinking, because, there are a lot of people who have a lot of influence who do actively despise me and they don't even know me. And that can be really overwhelming sometimes. It's really easy to go, why bother? When it just seems like people just love to hate you who have never met you. And I do think that the preface of that mindset and having to avoid the doom spirals that people get into on certain topics. I'm just saying that because, my approach to certain things was fairly and respectfully criticized by one commenter, and I want to preface that before I get into that criticism, and then a wonderful comment from a first-time commenter that made me happy. So here we go. Help support this channel if you like this content. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. There were a lot of really good comments this week, and so settling on some... there's a lot going on and a lot in my head, and trying to find narratives to present the facts is sometimes a challenge. So let's get to the, respectful criticism. The commenter said, personally, I don't think these back and forth with a commenter for a full video referring to Monday's video are particularly productive. However, in this case, I can understand the frustration that you're coming at this with. And that's why I reference narratives. Noted, understood. I respectfully disagree because abstract concepts tend to go over people's heads when we can close read an individual who, I'm giving complete benefit of the doubt on who just lost their shit, I do think it can be instructive, constructive, and productive. And I think that, yes, I don't like doing them all the time, but um, I do not like being coy. I don't do well being coy. If someone is coming at me, I like to just, the Ghost of Tsushima samurai way. Like, let's just freaking duel, man. Triangle, motherfucker. That's just my way. That's the way I feel most comfortable. But also, I do think some people do get in their heads and overstep. And in the case of Monday's video, the commenter claimed to be working with vulnerable men and displaying gaslighting behaviors. And in that case, as he said, it's not about me. I was really more concerned for those men. And so sometimes checking someone hard because they do have a duty of care and they're up in their feelings, I think that's worthy. Now, this commenter went on to say more. So again, I think it was productive. I think the biggest issue we come across with the no one cares phenomenon in men is that individually one can have all the support in the world, but it's more the idea that men TM don't have the support that women TM do. Even if I could come from an incredibly supportive background and a woman could come from the inverse, the sentiment remains. It's absolutely commendable to try to help people at small group levels. And that said, without ifs, ands, or buts, it does make a difference. Nonetheless, this is likely not to alleviate the underlying sentiment, as it is an incredibly inarticulate way of stating that societally and culturally, there is not the same standard. It may be something that is not fully accurate, but nonetheless rings true. Personally, I think it needs to be taken in the sense of Jordan Peterson's "I know you aren't a fan, but I can't think of another example" of something being true enough in which it speaks to an underlying thing that may not be empirically quantified, but still has an element of truth to it. And this is why I have issues with Jordan Peterson's methods that way. He's a psychologist. He knows about heuristic. Yes, he's a Jungian. He predates, a lot of his practice predates guys like Daniel Kahneman. Kahneman, I always mispronounce his name. I just don't agree with true enough. I don't agree with the principle of true enough because of those intuitive heuristics that can start very, very small, but the more you add, they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the world, the concept of the world, or society not caring about men, or society not caring about women. These things are constructs. It is impossible for us to truly experience the world. We can only inhabit our piece of it. This is something I had to come back from. This idea that the world hates. This can be argued to death. And the reality is that all the facts don't do a damn thing about getting progress in terms of interpersonal communications. These are emotional reactions. And the difference between Peterson's approach here, and his approach is such a patchwork of no, it's just facts. And then other times he's true enough. True enough is an intuitive heuristic in, the Thinking Fast and Slow version. And if you read Thinking Fast and Slow or anything that it inspired, you see how true enough takes you into such horribly wrong places, which unfortunately Jordan Peterson is a walking poster boy for. I mean, if his methods worked, he wouldn't be in his supervillain era, you know. If True Enough worked, he wouldn't have ended up in that hospital in Russia in a coma, because thinking he could just quit benzos after years of being on them was true enough for him. True enough is a heuristic. And sometimes, a lot of the time, it works well enough. There are circumstances, and one of the circumstances where True Enough falls apart is when you've got the double empathy gap between, say, autistic and allistic people. I know that's becoming a more popular term. I prefer neurotypical and neurodivergent because I am not autistic. I am neurodivergent. Neurodivergency is about more than autism, even though, you know, autism, ADHD, obviously the two big ones, but there are some of the rest of us that don't lump in there. So I'm going to continue to use the term neurodivergent, but I'm recognizing and giving validity to other people's taxonomies, for lack of a better term. But you get, when you start lumping together with True Enough, you do it often enough. And if you consider, you know, overlapping rings like a Venn diagram, okay, True Enough, you get two rings, you lose this little tiny sliver of people on either end. You add another ring, you lose another little tiny sliver. You add another ring, and the number of people who are getting cut out of the center of that Venn diagram gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually they become the majority. Too many people, and Jordan Peterson is one of them, chained together, you know, True Enough. And yet, when that elephant, when the emotions take hold, all of a sudden the True Enough standard is not good enough. I mean, for Peterson, one of them is the whole, you know, gender and people's pronouns. That, well, no, you're not who you say you are. I'm not going to indulge this, blah, 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 blah. Except, since we don't go around seeing the genitals of other people, and most people don't have never had their chromosomes tested in their life, they don't really know what their gametes are. It's all just a question of naming conventions, and they are prescriptive, True Enough labels that just call the person what the fuck they want to be called, you know. And it's funny, I have become so rigid in call people what they want to be called. I have adopted gender critical for people I think are just transphobes, but they want to be called gender critical. That's fine. I was talking to Eileen yesterday, and the whole thing about, you know, whether, you know, some pro-Gaza protesters are anti-Semites, and, you know, Eileen was like, call them what they are. I'm like, well, but they get upset when you call them an anti-Semite, so I'm going to call them pro-Gaza protesters, because that's what they want to be called. And you know what? It actually works better. And when you subscribe to True Enough, you do start, I don't want to say playing God, because that's just that's a metaphor for indulging in solipsisms, the idea that your perception, your experience is the only thing that can be known. Everything is just an extension of your perception. And that's the problem with True Enough, is when you are dealing with an awareness of other people's inner workings, True Enough often backfires because a neurotypical person is going to have very different assumptions about how that person they're talking to's inner workings work compared to a neurodivergent person. I mean, I do not instinctively understand why a lot of people do the things they do. I accept that they have reasons for what they do. And in the early going, I am more interested in understanding those reasons than judging whether those reasons are good or bad. We can get to that once I have the complete information. And I do that just to make myself less of an asshole, because I don't come from a, culturally dominant Christian perspective the way Jordan Peterson does, where all his holidays line up with stat holidays. We don't get Passover off work the way Christmas is a statutory holiday, and Good Friday, happy Good Friday, and Easter are statutory holidays. Yom Kippur, which is a fast day, you don't always get that off work. You may have to either not fast or you have to, take PTO. And that really changes your framing, and that's just here. I mean, in Muslim majority countries, you have to be the same. You have to slow brain certain things, the dominant culture. And that's what inclusion really is all about. And why I chafe at, as somebody I have done diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting, I chafe at the way it's handled a lot of the time, because there is no substitute for teaching people how to talk to each other. You cannot get a policy that encompasses everyone in a group. That's why I did the Trans Day of Trans Day of Visibility video, because even in a population that small, there is so little uniformity in terms of the needs that have to be accommodated. And because, you're talking about likely one or two people in the entire company, never mind the office, it makes so much more sense to sit down with them and go, what do you need? How can we make you feel valued here? And you know what? Then you just do that with everybody, no matter where they come from or what religion they practice or what they look like. And you got a great workplace. That's how it works. Instead, inclusion, equity training goes for a true enough approach, and nobody's happy. And they're burning millions, if not billions of dollars a year in this shit that I can't say it doesn't work. See, I could say it doesn't work and argue true enough. It does work. It just doesn't work. You're talking, and I'm pulling numbers out of my ass here. You're talking about numbers of 10% improvement, 20% improvement, So, the percentage of your workforce that's Black goes from 8% to 10%. Woohoo! But you're still under the proportion of society, at least in North America, which is somewhere between, 12 and 15%, depending on the measurement. Oh, but it shouldn't be exactly it. Okay. No, you're not going to get perfect representational parity. And if you're talking 10% versus 12%, all right, that might be a quibble. But when you're looking at companies like these tech companies that go all, yay, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and their staff is 1% Black, 2% Black, I call bullshit. I'll get off that, but that is my issue with true enough thinking. True enough thinking justifies, somebody who's a I believe in inclusion, walking into a room, like an online room, right, a message board, and going, well, I'm going to assume you're all white here, even though the owner's from Brazil. That is the asshole you make of yourself when you engage in true enough, right? Oh, well, this is a white opinion. And so it's true enough that they're performing whiteness. And so I can assume that they're white. No, you make an ass out of yourself, right? Because all you have to have is one person go, I'm Asian. And, you've just had somebody think you're an asshole that you didn't need to think you're an asshole. And trust me, when you're doing advocacy, people are going to think you're an asshole anyway. Welcome. It's funny that I criticized Jordan Peterson this week because the, certain very, very activist left-wing trans people have decided to spread that I am I'm cozy with Sargon of Akkad because I said good for him. I did one interview or maybe two on his channel during Gamergate, which was 2014. And then I said good for him when he apologized to, I think it was Lacey Green. That's it. Apparently I'm cozy with him, and that I am a big fan of Jordan Peterson because I said 12 Rules for Life is innocuous. I've criticized Jordan Peterson a ton, but they think that because I said something positive about these figures once, it's true enough that I'm cozy with them. True enough is a slippery slope. You have to engage and apply heuristics very, very consciously because we use so many unconscious heuristics. Again, that's what thinking fast and slow is about. And so, I'm juxtaposing this commenter respectfully criticizing me, saying that they don't think that this back and forth of the commenter are particularly productive. I'm going to jump over to a comment on the same video. A lot of people just engaged with the metaphor of the rider and the elephant. There's one comment about Alexander the Great I'm going to look up. I liked the fact that a lot of people said, I can see both sides here. That's productive to me. It's productive for me to go, this guy really got some alarm bells going in me, but I'm going to model giving him benefit of the doubt, even though he gave me none. And, this was a guy who used the true enough standard to say I was ignoring lonely men who truly have no one. And to me, I don't think that passes the true enough standard, because not being aware is not ignoring. Ignoring is someone is trying to get your attention. You're aware they're trying to get your attention and you don't give them your time. That is a very, very, very different thing for me, because to me, a fundamental communication principle I have tactically is give the other person maximum benefit of the doubt. I like to construct arguments where I will reward as many, many points to the person I disagree with as possible. 12 Rules for Life is innocuous. There's nothing objectionable in that book. I read it and I was prepared to, it's milquetoast. It's if that book helps someone and people do not engage with Jordan Peterson's more out there perspectives, there's no harm in that. I'll give them that. So it's very clear I don't have issues with Jordan Peterson as a human being. I have issues with his principles and where those take his viewpoints, because I think that the chain reaction of true enough leaves him in some fundamentally wrong places. When you keep shaving that enough off the truth, eventually you get into the territory where something is just false. And that's what I felt about the accusation of me ignoring men, and that I need to learn to respond to criticism better, and I need to be open to learning. And at some point, true enough isn't true. And I just think it's better to actually try to be true, try to stick to facts and not truthiness, not true enough, right? You can do trust but verify. If somebody says, I don't remember if it was 2 days or 3 days, I'll say 2. Okay, fine. Close enough. There's a favorite saying in my family of close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. If you're having a horseshoe argument, if you're having a hand grenade argument, horseshoes, all right, you get a couple points. That's what that means. Like, you get a few points for being close enough. That's my benefit of the doubt. That's my rewarding points to people like Jordan Peterson that I fundamentally disagree with. Hand grenades is somebody doesn't have to be direct hit to cause damage. And that's the problem. If you're going to use a close enough standard, it better be a horseshoe argument, not the horseshoe effect. But, okay, you get a few points here. And not a hand grenade where everybody's going to retreat from the blast radius. And unfortunately, because they don't want to get hit by it. And unfortunately, a lot of these true enough culture war fights are hand grenade arguments instead of horseshoe arguments. But then there was this lovely comment, and this is why I think that these videos are productive. Because, and I have to find it here. Crap, where'd it go? Oh yeah, here we are. Hi, new commenter here. This is a very, very long comment, and I don't have time. So I've highlighted certain things, but this commenter said, I've just recently been introduced to your channel. I'm awed by this balanced, compassionate, and insightful space you've created. Thank you so much for stepping up to pave such a balanced path in the pace of so much extreme polarity. I just want to share a few thoughts. This is in the same video that someone said wasn't productive, right? The core of this comment, and the comment is 1,122 words. And I love that. I'd much rather get a comment like this than a tweet that is like, bad take, but what the commenter said is, we so often run on the assumption and expectation that these things, the men issues, the women's issues, that we expect society at large to sort for us. But at the same time, we are unwilling to build these things on smaller scale in our own lives. Talked about, the general truism. We gotta do a thing on Two Women Talking or something like that on female spaces, because men's perception of female spaces is just so not reality. They think female spaces are a tea party. Girl world is the fucking Hunger Games. So we're gonna have to do something on that eventually, because I'll talk to Song about it, because holy shit, no guys, girl world is not this series of supportive environments. It's just not. If you're basing your assumption that the world doesn't care about men, that women get hugs and puppies when at will when we ask, it's not fucking true. It's a lot of passive aggressive and fake backstabby. Oh, I'm so sorry. Did you hear about what? Fucking bitch. It's fake. It's fake. The stuff you see as support is often quite fake, which is why women filter everything you say. And I'm still getting people uncomfortable with me over that. When you say this, women hear that video. And that was just information. Like, use the information. This is not a judgment. But no matter how many times I said it was not a judgment, people felt judged. And that's humans. Sometimes you have to know that's going to happen and do it anyway, because after the original sting, it will filter down. But this commenter went on. In male relationships, we don't see, the vulnerability, the emotionality, all that stuff, lack of judgment. We don't see it as often, to the point that it appears as though many men believe that the only truly emotionally supportive space they can get in is in a romantic relationship, as it's not something that they expect to receive in their friendships and other kinds of relationships. This can then lead to an imbalance and uneven distribution of emotional and relational responsibilities, as rather than branching out to develop the many kinds of relationships needed for a balanced and well-adjusted human being, the romantic partner is instead saddled with the emotional and relational responsibilities of a whole group of people. And also lead to such a crushing epidemic of loneliness, where when one feels that a romantic relationship cannot be achieved ongoing. Please read the comment. I guess to me, it comes down to, can we reasonably hold the larger society wholly responsible for building something in larger scale that we are unwilling to build in smaller scale in our own lives? Other people and society and culture as a whole, we cannot control, but ourselves, we can. And so the ultimate responsibility lies there in what we can control and do have a legitimate say in. And one part of learning how to cultivate and build spaces like these is ultimately challenging the inherent belief that emotions and vulnerability, and I suppose what people would traditionally call the more feminine principles and qualities, feminine in terms of fundamental essences of femininity and masculinity that are inherent to all living things, opposed to male and female, are in some way weak or inferior to masculinity. And unfortunately, this age-old belief is something that both men and women have fallen under the influence of in one way or another, leading to pervasive consequences and imbalances on all sides. Thank you, commenter. Like, you've said it for me. When I get a comment like that, I consider a video productive. Because, that just said in a different way. Right? We can't control the world. And think of it as macroeconomic factors versus your own well-being. The economy, the greater economy, can be growing. If you can't make your bills, you don't care. If a whole bunch of people are out of work, but you're doing well, you can help out the people in your life that are struggling, but no single person, not even the billionaires in the world, has enough resources to solve those big societal problems. So we have to work on the societal problems, which means working together to understand the societal problems. But also recognizing that, as the commenter said, we do have a responsibility to cultivate it in microcosm in our own lives first. And that's what I'm trying to do. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it to work through some of this stuff in microcosm one-on-one, coffee.com/LeannaK. Your donations to that are invaluable. I do need the money. But also, it makes someone feel like they matter, like someone cares when someone donates a session for them. That is the world caring. That is a stranger doing something just because human beings matter. There is power to that action. So thanks for watching. And I didn't have this thing ready because I was being so passionate about that. Have a great weekend.